You're in for a treat. Would you please help me welcome President Bob Moyer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, that sounds good. We're off to a good start. Thanks for coming, everybody. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be selected for tonight's presentation. It's just unbelievable for me, and it's a full circle trip for me. As Carol mentioned, I was a student here, faculty member here, and an administrator here. So she actually covered my background better than I could, so why don't we go to the next slide. What I wanted to do is cover a little bit of my background for the uninitiated, and then talk a little bit about my current position at WITC in that college real quickly, just so that you know who I'm talking about when I do mention them. I want to talk about the greatest generation and their contribution to servant leadership. And that'll be the toughest part for me to get through because I'm going to talk about my father a little bit. Then I want to cover servant leadership. Everything that's on the program today are things that I think contributed to my success, or our success, I should say our success, either at WITC or at UW Stout. And those are the elements that I want to cover. Strategic planning being very important, in my opinion. The importance of partnerships. I met with the College of
Education, Health, and Human Sciences.
Yeah, that's a different name than when I was here, so I wanted to make sure we got that right. And we had just a great conversation about some of the partnerships that are ongoing within the university and also between WITC and the university as well. I won't be able to cover the spectrum of partnerships that we talked about, Mary, in our meeting just before this, but I'll touch a few. I want to touch on measuring outcomes as well. I think that's an important part of leadership. And touch a little bit on the importance of CTE, or that's the first acronym I'm throwing at you. It's Career and Technical Education. It has a prominent role, I think, in society today, a very important role, and I want to talk about that. So with that, again, Carol did a really good job with the intro of my background that kind of summarizes it. It's on your handout, so there's some things I'm going to skim over that I didn't want to spend time talking about myself, but I think what's good here, if you go to the next slide, if you look at this backwards, I started as a general machinist because I had a great background in my high school, and there was a partnership between Milwaukee Area Technical College and Port Washington High School that allowed me to become a general machinist. That's how I started. Those are my roots. You have to remember your roots, folks. So. That's where I began, went on to be a tech ed teacher at River Falls School District, then a faculty member at Stout, and onward it goes. And ended up being president of Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College. Would I have ever predicted that I would have ended up there? I would say no. But what I learned here at UW Stout gave me the foundation to do that. And there are a lot of people that contributed to that sitting in the chairs up here. And they'll probably be quoted as we go along here. So I'm going to share what I think they shared with me that I think is important. Carol and I talked about titling this, and at first I suggested maybe we should call this The Accidental Leader, because it really wasn't an intended path. And I see Bob Berkemer here was one of my chairs, actually, as I was going through as a faculty member in materials and processes. And I know Bob will say that we had just an amazing group of instructors here at Stout and an amazing group of leaders that we benefited from. And I can remember feeling how wonderful it was to start here at Stout and have all of these resources, these mentors available. And in a flash, I looked around and I realized I was the oldest person in the department suddenly. So we were on all these search committees, and we brought in people like David Fly and others, and really rebuilt the staff at WITC. So I really felt that I needed to pay something back. We had such good leaders here, and so many of them, that it was my time to step up and do some leadership. So that's how I got into it. It was kind of accidental, but in a sense, I think some of those seeds were actually planted by my father. So a little bit about WITC, where I am now. That shows you the map up there. The white northwest quadrant of Wisconsin is where Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College is. We have campuses in Ashland, Superior, Rice Lake, and New Richmond, with some outreach centers in other places. Almost 60 programs. We cover 10,500 square miles. That's the biggest technical college district in the state of Wisconsin. Geography is definitely our biggest challenge. And having, when I was here, having several colleges work together within the same geography was challenging. Try that when you separate them all by a couple hours drive. It really makes it rather interesting. Okay, we can roll with that. I put the mission in here, and one of the things that I found really attractive about WITC was their focus on students and on learning. I have to say that it honestly felt like I never left Stout when I went to WITC, because Stout has the same focus on the students, a passion for learning, and making sure that they put the students first. And we have that at WITC too. I'm not going to go through the vision and that. You can read that, but I think the values are important. These were attractive to me. Empowerment of staff is important. Integrity is important. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Excellence, a focus on excellence, collaboration, and innovation. Those have to be the ingredients of a growing organization. So we have a lot of tenets. These are ways to capture how we want to shape the college and have the college move on. Focus on continuous improvement, the learning environment, decision-making being collaborative, and I'll talk about that, and leadership that's based on talent and vision. Go ahead. All individuals are valued. Students and staff are both teachers and learners. That is so true. Lifelong learning, and it doesn't matter whether you're actually enrolled in a course or not. You're going to be learning along the way. Diversity is respected and embraced. Dialogue takes place in a safe, open, and empathetic environment, and risk-taking is encouraged. Now, we try to make that be smart risk-taking. Do your research and your homework. So, our students that graduate from WITC, very much like Stout, Stout actually has a higher placement rate. I think it's 98%. Yeah, 97.5, 92%. 80% of our students are employed in Wisconsin. 70% roughly stay in our district. So we're really a good brain gain strategy for the district we serve. And our average starting salary is about almost $34,000. We do follow-up studies on our graduates. Our last graduates over 5 years would have been 2006. Their salary growth was 51% over 5 years during very difficult economic times. I point this out only because if you're a student here, you're enrolled in programs that are built around employers' needs, like ours. And you've come to a great place. You're going to get a job, you're going to start a career. This is a very healthy place to be. You've made a good choice. Okay. Our students that graduate, 97% of them are very satisfied or satisfied with their education. And now I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about my father. And he kind of inspired me to be a leader, although I didn't know it when he was doing the inspiration. I learned that later on. He was a pretty special person. He was a veteran of World War II. He went through the Normandy invasion and the Battle of the Bulge. He was the lead tank going into the liberation of Nordhausen, which was one of the many concentration camps. He didn't talk about his experience much. He, by the way, is the guy behind the fish on the photo on the right. You'll look at his shirt, it looks a little splattered. Can you see that, the blue shirt there on the right? He was a painter. That's what he did by profession. General machinist to start, and he became a painter. But the point about my father was when he came back from World War II, like many of the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw calls them, they had an intense desire to say, I'm going to try to fix the world. Many of my comrades died on the field. And this is the tough part. I didn't make it. I owe it to this world to make it a better world. And that's the context that he really became a servant leader. And that's the point of what I want to do tonight. The gentleman holding up the fish is a gentleman named Bob Ellis, E-L-L-I-S. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a rather famous muskie fisherman. This isn't a muskie that he's got here. But he sang in the choir with my father and my mother. And one day he showed up. This is a picture in 1965 with a rather large northern, and we had quite a feast that night. But he was also a servant leader. I really looked up to them as role models. I'm the kid in the very front right. That's me. So enough with the whole movies, I think. So that's my father running for mayor. He was alderman for 7 years. He was elected mayor 5 times, 2-year terms. And his nickname was Ziggy. So this is in tribute to Ziggy because he got me started, I think. And because he was a painter, this is his old Buick LeSabre. I went on many occasions to knock on doors and hand out those little flyers, and he hand-painted, this is sort of like Mayberry RFD-ish, isn't it? Hand-painted election signs. So that was my dad, and he said that when I asked him, there were many trials that he had as mayor. I can remember on one occasion he had a very irate citizen call him on a winter like this in the 60s, and we had a terrible snowstorm on a Saturday night. And Sunday morning when we were getting ready to go to church, we got this call from an irate citizen who said, "The snow's piled up over the fire hydrant. What are you going to do about it?" And expecting the city crew to come out. And Dad said, "Bob, go get 2 shovels and put them in the Buick LeSabre." And we drove out and we shoveled out the fire hydrant. I was very excited because I thought I was going to get a pass on going to church. Didn't happen. I didn't get a buy on that, and we shoveled it out. And the interesting thing about it, I remember this because that irate citizen came out with a 3rd shovel and started shoveling, and they became lifelong friends. I thought that was pretty neat. So he had some great values. And I hope that I can share some of that with you and that you can adopt some of that. This is Bob Berkemer's here. You might remember this quote, Bob. He actually gave me this when I applied for the dean's job. It's a beautiful quote from the president of Ohio State, where Bob went to school, I believe, for a while, right? William E. Kerwin. I actually met this gentleman. He said, "You become a great university because you have great programs. You have great programs because you have a great faculty and staff." And that says it all, doesn't it? And that's what Stout has, a long tradition of a great staff that is student-focused. Okay. I'm adapting this. Many in the audience may not know of Jim Benson, but he was a dean in the College of Technology, Engineering, and Management in those days. Way back. I think it was the School of Industry and Technology, actually, at that time. He went on to become president at Dunwoody and also Bemidji State. But he once showed this org chart, the upside-down org chart. Look at where the president is. It, in a picture, kind of tells you on this org chart exactly what his definition of servant leadership is. And I think it's very eloquent in the way that it demonstrates that. So what's interesting here is that the president is serving everybody above in that pyramid, and that's the way I see my role. And the faculty and staff are actually serving a lot of stakeholders as well, aren't they? So we all need to be servant leaders. That's the message. And what does that mean? For the president to be a servant leader, you're a steward of the mission, you're a role model of values and tenets, a facilitator of learning, a partner and a collaborator, an advocate and enabler of excellence and accountability, an effective listener and communicator, a team builder, an external spokesperson and marketer, a co-planner, and the co is important on that, information share, people developer, champion of professional development, a resource catalyst, a supporter, and you need to be self-confident centered and not arrogant. You need to be humble, so to speak, and I hope I try to do that. It is one of the most exciting jobs that you can ever imagine because you're like a teacher, which is a pretty important role. You're developing people. And my father would really enjoy that because it's an opportunity to change the world, and you are changing lives. I put this slide in for you, Howard. When I was interviewing for the dean's role at Stout, Howard interviewed me, and he asked me a variety of questions, but the one that stuck with me, he says, "What's a one-word definition of leadership?" My response was honesty. I think that leaders need to be honest. And Howard says, my one-word definition would be integrity, which I think encompasses honesty too. I think Howard had a better answer. Integrity is very important in a leader. You have to have a moral code of ethics. You need to have a soundness about you. You need to be honest. And those are the key ingredients. I'll probably quote this book. It's one that I love and I brought along, The Servant by James Hunter. Very good book. I like it because it's thin. I read this in a weekend, and that's how I measure my books. If I can read them in a weekend, they have a shot. There are too many books that I've started that I've never finished, and this is not one of them. I actually finished this. Beautiful quote from James Hunter: patience, kindness, humility, selflessness, respectfulness, forgiveness, honesty, commitment. They're the character building blocks or the habits that must be developed and matured if we are to become successful leaders who will stand the test of time. Ken Blanchard, and I know that Charlie Kruger has shared a lot about Ken Blanchard, but he's written a number of very good books. And one of them that I really like is The Heart of the Leader, but this quote's from, I think, another book that he had. People with humility don't just think less of themselves, they just think of themselves less often. I think that's very good for a leader to behave that way. When I did kind of put my hat in the ring for the CTEM Dean's job, we were working very closely. Charlie was with the people process culture and Bob Cervenka. And Bob's advice to me was pretty succinct. He said, if you can establish a culture of respect, you will have a good college, basically. And it was great advice. This is their card that they had posted all over in Phillips Plastics. When each of us understands, believes, and practices that all people are important, we too will also realize that people working together achieve more. It's part of the people process, it's our culture. Right, Kat? Yeah. Kat's a past PPC chair. So, I like this one from Colin Powell on respect. This is interesting. Leadership does not emerge from blind obedience to anyone. Xerox's Barry Rand, was right on target when he warned his people that if you have a yes man working for you, one of you is redundant. That's a little harsh. Good leadership encourages everyone's evolution. I would hope you have a couple yes men or yes people in your organization because it makes things a little easier. But the point I think that Colin Powell's making is that diversity of thinking adds strength. And that's very important. And it's sometimes hard. Sometimes the message comes across maybe a little abrasive because people are passionate. And sometimes you get a little bit frustrated with that as a leader. But those are the times when you need to take a deep breath and say, this is very important. We need to respect this. And you need to role model that respect so that you can encourage a civil dialogue. And the strength of an organization is its diversity of thinking. Okay? This is a wonderful quote. It's actually lifted out of The Servant, and it quotes Vince Lombardi. I don't necessarily have to like my players and associates, but as a leader, I must love them. Love is loyalty, love is teamwork, love respects the dignity of the individual. This is the strength of any organization. And I think it's very important. When you think about the love that you have for your parents or the love that you have for your children, love means that you're going to be honest with them. You're going to assess their performance, so to speak, and give it to them straight, unvarnished. That's how we grow. So I love this quote. And then this is one that I shared with my college at WITC. Ask not what your college can do for you, ask what you can do for your college. Now maybe I twisted that a little bit, but it gets the point across that we all need to do some of the lifting. What I value as a leader: honesty and openness, hard work and commitment, teamwork and respect for others, a service attitude, pursuit of excellence and continuous improvement, a willingness to make meaningful change and try new ideas, initiative and organization. Go back one. I didn't do the pictures on this. My able assistant, Kim Olson at WITC, did, and she wanted to make sure I had this slide in. These are the Rotary Roses that you started me with here, and Deb Tenario has been the recipient of these. This is one thing we do every year, and Charlie got that started with the Rotary Roses. Is I buy a bunch of Rotary Roses, and it's my way. I hand them out to both genders, by the way, and I thank people for their service. It's my way of saying thanks. It's a simple, symbolic way to say thank you. Little hokey, but hokey works, folks. It creates an environment. Okay. I like a can-do attitude, an intense desire to learn. Humor is important. Pete Heimdahl and Joe Binkowski were on our team in CTEM. They were always joking around. It's important to bring levity into your work a little bit. I don't have this quote in here, but you know that the one quote, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. That's really great advice. Strategic planning is important. External partnerships are, and I've included some of these topics later. Celebrating achievement is very important because people work very hard, and I think, Charlie, in your research, sometimes pay and some of the intrinsic things in the environment don't rise to the top all the time. But having the ability to be involved and empowered is pretty important to employees. I remember that from some of the research that you did. So you need to celebrate that so people feel valued. And then balancing between work life and family life. You can go now. She's trying to keep me moving here. This is great, so it goes along with celebrating. The key to developing people is to catch them doing something right. And all too often as managers, we may focus on what happened that's wrong. Well, what happened that's right? Celebrate that. Okay? And this is footnoted to Dr. Charles Kruger. Raise your hand, Charlie, so people may not know you. I had Charlie as one of my teachers in org leadership, and he said that who was a high performer? Mae West. Yeah, Mae West. Right. He doesn't even remember what he taught. I remembered this since I had that class because of that little thing, that Mae West was a high performer. A lot of people in this room may not even know who that is, but she was an amazing performer. And that was the way to remember this formula, that performance equals motivation, a person's motivation, times their ability, times expectations. Okay? And that gets me to Theory X and Theory Y leadership. How many people have ever heard about that? All right, let's read this. There's a guy named, I think, Douglas McGregor from the Sloan Institute that kind of did this study, and he said there are two types of managers. One manager assumes that everybody's screwed up and wants to, basically be lazy and not work hard, and they need to be managed. Now, if most people were like that, I think most of us won't want to be leaders because that's a lot of hard work. The other theory is that most people are self-motivated, want to contribute, and they need to be empowered. And in reality, I think a lot of people are. Let's go to the next slide. Here's my assessment of reality. About more than 95% of the people fall in the Theory Y category. All you got to do is turn them loose and empower them. And then there's like the 2% or 5%. It's a little bit, takes me back to teaching where I used to say that if you get an A or an F in my class, you've worked damn hard at it. Because you've worked hard to get that excellent A, but if you fail the class, you've really worked hard at that too. You wanted to fail, and the Theory X workers in the population will self-identify themselves. And unfortunately, as a manager, you'll spend an inordinate amount of time on them. But if you've heard of the book From Good to Great by Jim Collins, he will say, get the right people on the bus, right? My corollary to that is, if you have the wrong person on the bus, get them off the bus. Because the Theory Y people are watching to see what you're going to do with those Theory X people. And if you're not dealing with that rotten apple, they're going to get frustrated. So that's sort of I call it the part of the job that's like taking out the trash. No one likes to do it, but someone's got to do it. The good news is that most people are self-motivated in Theory Y people, so they're a joy to work with. Okay? And in terms of balance, we talked about family balance. Don't always, this is Colin Powell again, don't always break at or run at a breakneck pace. Remember why you go to work. You go to work for yourself, for your own self-growth, but also probably for your family, to support your family. So take leave and take time to be with your family. Balance things out. All right, there are a lot of great suggestions, and I actually have another handout from here, but this is another recommended reading. I love this. Thank God it's Monday. How many people go to work on Monday and say, God, I'm glad it's Monday. I'm glad to be back at work. This is a great book because it's all about attitude and how you can control your world. And you can make Mondays the best day of the week. And then Tuesday becomes another good day, and so on. So I highly recommend that book. And I've actually got a handout. She's got about 10 or 15 things on a list that you can do to be a good employee. Okay. All right, I want to shift now to strategic planning because I think strategic planning is really important. And it's been an ingredient that's brought success for our college when I was here, for CTEM, but also for WITC. And I love this quote from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. It's the Cheshire Cat, hard to pronounce that, is having a discussion with Alice, and Alice is wondering which way to go down the path. And she says, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat says, that depends on where you want to get. Well, I don't much care where, says Alice. Then it doesn't really matter which way you go, says the cat. So long as I get somewhere, Alice says. Oh, you're sure to do that, says the cat. If only you keep walking. And, you know, the point of this is we can get somewhere, right? We can spend resources. But are we going down the right path and are we doing the right things? Can we focus our energy and our precious resources in a way that takes us down a path we want to go on deliberately and we can get farther with it? That's the whole point behind strategic planning, which is why I really love this exchange, because it really is illustrative. Okay, so here's my reasons on why we want to do strategic planning. A plan by many is better than a plan by one, better than Bob's plan. It creates buy-in. It creates a common vision or a roadmap on where we want the college or the institution to go. It'll engage and connect all college stakeholders and embrace diverse feedback. You can manage change rather than change managing you because you're aware of it, you plan it. You can identify priorities that take advantage of opportunities that are out there. And as I mentioned, you can use your precious resources wisely and develop new sources of support. Implement priority action items more effectively and efficiently and achieve your mission. At WITC, we've designed our process to be inclusive, responsive, and transparent. You know, what I mean by that is we try to include all stakeholders in the process. Our employers, community members, whoever we serve, our employees and our students, administrators, they're all in the process. They're all suggesting ideas. We try to be responsive, and that means that if we identify a need, we're going to try to address that need. Now, I'll qualify that in a minute because you're going to get a lot of ideas out of strategic planning, and you don't have the resources to do all of them. And it needs to be transparent so the whole world can see it. WITC, our strategic plan is out on the web page. You can find it, and I think we even have a link somewhere in this handout. This is the plan right here, all the action items, all the steps. And all too often, if it's done wrong, this just sits on the shelf. But this is part of our measurement process. I measure my VPs on what they're responsible for. These are broken out by division, and we will have our performance reviews in May and June, and we will be going over this. That sounds heavy-handed, but once you develop a roadmap that people buy into, they're energized. They want to do this. They're proud of what they accomplished. It's a great evaluation process when you get into it. Okay? We do a lot of listening through the process. This is an old proverb. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. We should listen twice as much as we speak. And, you know, there's a little bit of philosophy on should a leader have a lot of vision and bring a vision to an organization? I didn't necessarily bring a large vision to WITC, other than I wanted to have them have their own vision and have ownership of it. That was my vision. And I think we accomplished that. So what I would say is that vision is really highly dependent on your ears, not your eyes, or not what you're thinking. We have at WITC actually it's more than 30 members now, a Quality Improvement Steering Committee. This committee deals with our AQIP action projects, but they're also our steering group, and they facilitate all our strategic planning sessions. I think it's important to mention this because you will see by type of employee, those are listed up there, and by location. We want to make sure all our locations are part of the process, and all of our various categories of employees are included in it. All the way to our custodial staff is involved. And this is sort of our timeline for it. We do, this plan is under execution right now. It's our 2012 to 2015 plan. We do a plan in a 3-year time bucket, and we're already planning the 2015 to 2018 plan. It's an 18-month planning process while we're implementing a 3-year process. And this shows you we're tracking how much we've completed here with the green column over there on the right. But I'll just give you the 50,000-foot overview. We hold listening sessions at every location we have a campus. And at each of those locations, we invite employers in, community members, legislators. We also have a student listening session and an employee listening session. And we get a lot of comments, and then that steering committee I talked about pores over all of those and categorizes those and looks for themes. The themes become objectives and action items that we tackle. And then we bring them back to the divisions to figure out how we're going to address all this. And you may say, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of work and a long process. And you're right, it is. But here's the interesting thing. I think you accomplish a lot more by investing the time up front doing the planning. Definitely the success rate is much higher. Why do you think that is? Pardon?
You don't waste your time.
Yeah, you know exactly what you want to do. Why else? Other thoughts? People have bought into the process. They've been part of the process. Every employee is part of the forums. Not every employee is on the Quality Improvement Steering Committee, but they have representation there. And everything is posted on our web, by the way, too. So the buy-in is amazing. And once you have buy-in, people will go down the road a lot further and a lot faster. So you spend time on the front end, but you gain time on implementation. We had 20 forums this year. In the fall, we had 414 people attend those. We had 1,200 comments, 1,201. And the link to the strategic planning site is on this page. So we'll post this. This is available on WITC's website. We'll give it to you if you want to post it So if you just click on this, you'll go right to our website where our strategic plan is, and you can see it. Okay? This seems appropriate right here when you have 1,200 comments. How are you going to winnow and sift those? And we'll show you what goals we have, but we also say the serenity prayer here, where God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can change and the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. I'll give you one example. The last cycle of strategic planning was right through the throes of Act 10's implementation in the state. That was not a fun time for most employees, whether you were in administration or you were in the rank and file, and especially for technical college employees who had been accustomed to being part of collective bargaining and part of a negotiation process and a dialogue. It was a fearful time for them because what they had done in the past had been dramatically pulled away from them. So what we try to do is establish mechanisms to bring that back in and assure them that they had a voice, that we were going to listen to them. So we could control how we responded to Act 10, but we didn't write the legislation, did we? We couldn't control that. So it kind of applies here to the serenity prayer. You have to know what boundaries of things you can actually control and work with them. These are the categories, the main categories. When we do, our Quality Improvement Steering Committee will be at all the forums, and we'll have 6 flip charts up in the front. All 5 of these categories will be up there. So as we get a suggestion from an employer that they want a new program, it'll probably go under student-focused, that category, because it pertains to the students. Or if the students say, this actually happened, like hundreds of students when the first time I did this said, Bob, and they didn't call me Dr. Meyer, they maybe called me Dr. Bob, but they said, we're getting killed by the cost of textbooks. And most of them were buying new textbooks. Our nursing students were spending over $2,000 for their textbooks. And so we looked at it. The number one reason why a student would leave WITC is money. Either they're supporting a family or whatever. So we ended up finding, we put a committee together with students and faculty on it, and they found a source called Nebraska Books. If you want to buy brand new books, you can, and it'll be expensive. But you can buy a used book or you can rent a book and you can cut your costs in half. I had actually talked to Brenda Swanek here about creating a textbook rental program. This is even better because we don't hold the inventory on it. So they ended up with an even better solution. So our strategic goals are pretty enduring, and if you're familiar with AQIP, these should smell familiar to you because they're actually AQIP categories. There are, what, 9 categories, I think, in AQIP? And so we've combined a few, but these are pretty enduring, and we can fit almost every suggestion under those and group them together, identify the themes, and figure out where we want to go with action items. I like this from Michelangelo. It's better to aim too high and miss than it is to aim too low and succeed. Okay? Make it a stretch goal. Okay. This is my quote. I made this up. There are no failures as long as you learn from them. Okay? There are things that don't work. And that's why measurement's important. You want to know when something's not working so you can learn from it. But if you're going to just ignore it and not learn from it, then it's a failure. Okay. Abraham Lincoln said, it's surprising how much you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. It's another great quote. I don't care. It's not my strategic plan. It's theirs, and they're very proud to accomplish it. And once they do, you can brag about what a great leader you are. And you can go to speak to audiences like this. So it all works, right? All right, there are pages in there, and I'm not going to read all these, but these are our accomplishments as we track what we've accomplished with strategic planning. And the AQIP projects are identified in green text. You can see the little thing there. So those were actually things that we talked to the Higher Learning Commission about when we went through accreditation. Okay, we can, I think, this one's good because I like the picture. We launched 4 programs: Dental Assistant Program, Building Performance Technician Program, Human Services Associate Program, and Composite Technology. That last one was for Kestrel Aircraft, and Steve he flies, so he's very He's thumbs up on that. This is a very lightweight aircraft. It's made with carbon fiber composite skins, and Kestrel needs people that know how to make those skins. So we launched that program based on the listening session that we had. A lot of Kestrel people in that said, we want to hire your graduates. We'd hire 8 of them tomorrow if we had them. We said, we'll put a program together for you then. Okay. And so on and so forth. Keep going. You can read these. Let's save some time. There are a lot of nice accomplishments. I want to talk about this last bullet. That's an acronym. We leverage the CESI and the SSI. And you may say, what is that? The CESI is the Community College Survey of Student Engagement. That's the acronym for it, or we call it the CESI. It's a national survey that we use, and it's a battery of over 70 questions that ask students, how do you like your parking, and how do you like your engagement with faculty, da-da-da-da-da-da. Lots of questions. And we use that to identify gaps. And is this something we want to work on to make the college better? The SSI is a Noel Levitt survey. The CESI is only available, I think, in odd-numbered years, and the Noel Levitts we use in between because we want to survey every year. And it's a random process. Not every student gets surveyed. About 25% of our students do. So we use that. Okay, keep clicking. We did all kinds of great stuff with strategic planning. So this is all bragging. This is neat. Okay, go back one, Carol. Thank you. This is the Quality Improvement Steering Committee. We just identified our action items for this next round. And then I said, well, put on flip charts. Let's talk about how we improve the process. We're going to have a summer summit. That was one of the suggestions. And then they wanted to put down what they liked about it. And here's what they said about what they liked about it. Students are invested in the idea of strategic planning because they're involved. It makes it like a family here. There's strong support of everything we do. I'm not just a number at WITC as an employee. It provides a fabulous work environment. WITC has a caring faculty and staff. Okay. Student comments indicate they value what we are doing. It's great feedback. The staff see how their positions contribute to the college's success. Well, let's keep doing what we're doing. We're doing a great job. That's pretty affirming stuff. Okay. We get affirmed in another way. There are outside agencies that watch what we're doing. The Aspen Institute selects, there are about 1,200 community colleges in the country, or two-year colleges, a little more than 1,200. WITC the last 2 years was selected by the Aspen Institute as their top 150 colleges. So it's nice external validation. Bankrate.com in September came out and ranked WITC 18th in the country for affordability. And I think that's directly connected to what we did with the cost of textbooks and things like that. Okay? And then these are, by the way, these are all WITC students jumping up and down. These are real students. They're not just photoshopped in. But Washington Monthly Magazine does a ranking. I mentioned these are odd-numbered years that we do the CESI survey. They take that information along with cost data and other things that we provide, the National Data Warehouse, and they do a ranking. WITC was ranked 4th in the country in September this year. 4th technical college in the country. We're really proud of that. I should also mention, I have to continue to brag a little bit, 2 years before that, WITC was ranked number 6, and 2 years before that, number 7 in the country. So I'm not going to take full credit because there's been a culture of continuous improvement at the college before I even came there. I like to think that, I helped raise the bar. The direction is the right direction. We continue to go up. WITC is the only two-year college in the country to be in the top 10 of all the colleges in all 3 rankings that this outfit has done. So we're really proud of that. We think it's linked to strategic planning and the involvement of our employees and the empowerment of our employees. This is a long quote, but we just got our quality checkup from the EQIP folks at the Higher Learning Commission, and we bolded out one of the most important things. They're really endorsing what we're doing. At the end, they're saying, according to the students, The college has earned its national ranking. I couldn't be more proud of that. That's just really cool. Okay. Partnerships are important, and I'm looking at my time, and we want to allow a little time for questions, right? Let's just roll through these really quick. We work with, not that quick. We work with our regional economic development groups like Momentum West and Visions Northwest. Stout excels at that, by the way. I know that we wouldn't have launched some of the programs that we did here without that involvement. When you have that involvement, your community advocates for you, and that gets you above the politics of the system when you need to get things done. Okay. We work with our workforce investment boards. For WITC, that's number 7 and number 8 up there on the map, blue and orange. The blue one is the Northwest Wisconsin Workforce Investment Board, and the orange part is Workforce Resources, run by Dick Best. Does an outstanding job. Very on top of when there's a plant closing and there are unemployed workers and they need to be trained, they're right on top of it, and WITC can be a good partner in that. So this is a great partnership for us. We work with Gold Collar Careers. That's a partnership between Stout, Chippewa Valley Tech College, and WITC, and many manufacturers to let students know some of the outstanding careers available in manufacturing to get the pipeline full. Excellent program. There are several pages in here of things that we've done, all the way from simple things like running ads in the movie houses and stuff like that. Okay, click right this. There we go. St. Croix Valley Initiative, click again. And the Northwest Educators for Regional Development. These are partnerships between the K-12 system, the technical colleges, and the universities to work on credit transfer arrangements and do that laddering that we were talking about earlier. So Stout is an exceptional university in working with the technical colleges. It's the go-to place. And I think in terms of the number of articulation agreements or credit transfer agreements, number 1 in the state, without any competition almost. So this shows you some of those credit transfer arrangements that we have. We accept some classes from, we have 48 school districts, and we have some sort of an agreement with all of them. So we think that's good, as students know, and we can have certified teachers teaching what we are able to deliver. It takes the mystery out of coming to WITC because they understand what we have to offer. So we love these agreements. And likewise, we were just talking this afternoon about early childhood education. We have a 2+2 program there where they can take their first 2 years at WITC, transfer it right into Stout's program, and away they go. It can save them money, and it can create a good pathway for them. So it's good stuff, okay? Measuring outcomes is important, and I'm going to touch on this real quickly. We do a consortium with 3 other technical colleges. This mortified me. When I started at WITC, our IT and networking folks, it was a 3-way consortium. And I was coming from Stout, where we had become a digital campus and a laptop campus, and I thought that was hard, with our chief information officer located at the institution. Now try and do that with a 3-way partnership. I thought this could be ugly. But the fact of the matter is it works pretty well. We actually outsourced this to Dynamic Campus Solutions, a group that actually performed that for us. So it worked out pretty good for us because we didn't have a lot of internal strength when we started doing a lot of the network development and distance delivery, online programming. But we matured as time went on. This is before I became president. When I came in there, we had a very good IT staff. We had developed the infrastructure locally. So when the budget crisis came, we said, you know what, rather than outsourcing this, let's reverse this and insource it. Let's hire our own CIO. We're mature as a partnership. We can manage that person, and we can do this ourselves and save some money. We were paying a lot of a premium to have Dynamic Campus Solutions, Axel, and they did a great job. That's not a diss, but go ahead. what we ended up doing is tracking help desk responses. And as you can see, the total number of help desk occurrences or tickets is shown with the red bar. The kind of is that gray bar above the red bars. You can see the trend of those resolved at level 1, which means that we resolved this on the phone. We didn't have to send a technician in to solve it. You can see that's going up, and that saves time and frustration on the part of our students and staff. So we track that. The insourcing worked for us because we had more control. Okay. And we saved a lot on the budget. You can see the total budget between the 3 colleges was up about $2.5 million. After we went to insourcing, we were spending about $1.5 million on all 3 colleges. So divide that by 3, each college was saving about $500,000. The reason I'm showing you this is that when you have goals, you should measure goals. And maybe we wouldn't have saved money, but we wanted to know whether our strategy was working, and that's why we measured it. Okay. I mentioned the CESI survey, right? And the CESI breaks out our performance. We can compare our performance against other colleges within the Wisconsin, but also in CESI's small school cohort. About half of the 1,200 colleges are small colleges, the other half are big. They have a lot more students than us. And we benchmark ourselves against the other small colleges. And you can see our performance in 2011 is that green bar or chartreuse, whatever that color is called. And our performance in 2009 is the orange bar, so you can see us moving up, continuous improvement. And then how we compare, the middle bar is the small group cohort. So we're happy with how we compare nationally. That's another good reason to measure. You can compare yourself to other people, benchmark. I mentioned cost of textbooks. You can fly through this because these are the reasons on the CESI survey. A lot of students can't afford their college educations. Here are some examples of the cost savings by category that we realized, and we actually measured that. Just a quick little message about the importance of career and technical education. Near and dear to my heart. It's where I started here. Go back to that, because the title slide says, "Is skill, industry, and honor still relevant?" Where did you hear that before? Over Bowman Hall, right? Yeah. That's what this institution was founded on. Okay. And I think really another good read, if you haven't read it, is The Coming Job Wars by Jim Clifton. Excellent book. It's a good read. What I learned in this book is that the Gallup Group has been interviewing people over 150 countries for a number of years. And the conclusion is what the whole world wants is a good job. Okay? And Jim Clifton says if you were to ask me from all the world polling Gallup has done for more than 75 years, what would fix the world, what would lead to world peace, it would be giving people good jobs. Okay? And he calls them formal jobs. 1.8 billion formal jobs would really be a Band-Aid for the world. And he defines what formal job is. He says what America's most pressing problem is, according to Gallup, is a lack of good jobs. Under the bottom there in blue, this is one of the most important discoveries that we've made. At the very least, it needs to be considered in every policy, every law, and every social initiative. And I totally agree with that. It's not been our focus, and it should be. Okay. Couple examples. The shortage of skilled workers in manufacturing is already costing that sector of the economy over $7 billion a year because we can't place talented people in the job openings that are there. Keep this one. The Federal Reserve of Minneapolis, this gentleman, who I'm not going to read that name because I know I won't get it right anyway, he said closing the skills gap would lower the national unemployment rate by 2.5%. Okay? And Barack Obama gets it. He says our most urgent mission is to get this economy growing and get jobs going faster. And the next quote kind of connects that to the value of career and technical education. It's to get a skill. And I'm using the word skill very broadly. we're hearing from our employers, not only do you need technical skills, but very much need to be problem solvers. You need to be strong in math and science. It's a broad set of skills that are needed. Okay. Scott Walker, his goal is to create 250,000 jobs, and we want to help him with that. And they're starting to come around and put some more dollars into career and technical education. Okay, I'm not going to go, there are several other quotes here. You can kind of click through them. They're from the co-chairs, there happens to be a Democrat and a Republican on this national committee for career and technical education. They're saying very strongly, we need career and technical education in this country. We probably even need to reinvent it. But we certainly need to fund it, because there's a connection between that type of education and jobs. All right, so that's sort of the idea behind this. The bottom line is they're all saying we need career and technical education. So I think now more than ever we need it. And the country needs to develop better strategies on it. So does the state. Here's our challenge. According to the former Secretary of Education, Richard Riley, he said 60% of all the new jobs in the 21st century will require skills possessed by only 20% of the current workforce. We are currently preparing students for jobs that don't exist, using technologies that haven't been invented to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. Really interesting, because I do some presentations with a owner of, or a VP at Nexen Industries in Webster, Wisconsin. And he was throwing out examples of some high-end technologies like 3D printing. And he's saying someday they're going to be able to print tissue, human tissue for you. And I did that presentation like in August with him. We did it again in September. He had to change his slide because they were actually printing skin on a 3D printer. So there's convergence of the biological sciences with the technology of printing. It's coming, and that's what this speaks to. We need to be ahead of the technology curve, and we need to try to prepare students for those opportunities. Okay, so a couple last quotes here. This goes back to, I can hear Ziggy Meyer saying this. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. That's Dr. Seuss, one of my esteemed philosophers. And this is an old one. What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. And finally, choose work you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life. Also a good quote. Okay, after that 1 hour filibuster, we're now open for questions and comments. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Smalley.
I rate speakers on the,
Uh-oh.
if they understand that we will forget most of what you have said.
Yes.
So what would you like us to remember 3 to 5 years from now?
Oh, 3 to 5 years from now. I think that the importance of career and technical education, first of all, and our country has to wrap its arms around it. It is exceedingly important, and we need to have a national game plan on it. And then the other thing is that you might be an accidental leader someday for our younger folks. Lee, you might still be. You have that potential. You could be an accidental leader yet. So keep that in mind, and you'll never know where it's going to go. But if you are, I would recommend you consider the servant leader model, because I've seen it work. I think it's a good model. And I thank many of the teachers that are here participating today, because you had some impacts on that model and how I deployed it or implemented it. And I'm greatly appreciative to that. I'm looking at Charlie. He's being modest and not looking back.
I have a burning question. Have you read any thick books lately?
No. Let's see. No. The answer is no. If they're more than this thick, I was going to say yes, but it would have been a lie. because if it's thicker than this, I get a book on tape. And then I do a lot of traveling, and so I put it on the speakers in the car, and I listen to it on the way down, and hope I don't run into somebody, because I have trouble focusing sometimes when I do that. Good question.
The title, I'm sorry.
Howard.
How do you propose these young people prepare for leadership roles?
You know, I mentioned my father, and there was a time in my life where I thought I was smarter than my dad. And it's amazing, especially once you have kids, you start learning how brilliant your parents are. And that's the way it turns out. I don't know how you can prepare other than go back to that proverb, you have 2 ears and one mouth, listen. Do a lot of listening. I just think that's so important. And value your education here. You've got an amazing faculty to learn from here. And I know they have some tremendous perspectives. I grew from that, and seek them out and work with them and ask them a lot of questions, pester them. That's what they want. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Howard. I just thought of one more thing related to Howard's question, though. And this, we've got daughters and they're starting their careers, and once in a while they experience someone who may not be the greatest leader. Just one other corollary or caveat to throw out. And I didn't think of this because of you, Howard. You were a great leader, by the way. I just want to qualify that. Howard was a tremendous leader, so I'm connecting it to your question. And that is, be patient. You know, you can learn from bad leaders too. And you can say, I don't know if I would do it that way. So let life flow and let it happen and learn from it, file it into memory, and you can grow from it. The whole point is try to keep growing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.